For 11 minutes, I thought a forklift driver had made a mistake. Then a speaker hidden behind the container wall crackled, and my ex-fiancé called me Scout. It'd been inside refrigerated container HLXU 4419083 since 2012 that Thursday night, September 7, 2023. I knew the number because I'd typed it into Harborline's system twice, correcting a customs code for frozen shrimp while my vending machine coffee cooled beside the keyboard. The inspection stencil was faded yellow. It read, 04-118-2017 on the door, ordinary details. The kind your brain keeps because the larger thing won't fit. The temperature alarm had pulled me into Bay R17. I expected 40 pallets and a bad sensor. Instead, the floor was dry, the refrigeration unit was disconnected, and a plywood wall had been bolted 6 feet from the rear doors. Then metal struck behind me. When I woke, my wrists were cinched with plastic ties. A battery lantern hung from a hook. One blue water jug stood beside 43 silver food packets and a 5-gallon chemical toilet. Somebody had drilled a breathing hose through the reefer housing. Somebody had counted my meals. At 9,034, the speaker clicked. Scout. Cole Danner was the only person who called me that. Had used it when we were engaged, then later in emails that made my attorney lean across her desk and ask whether I had somewhere else to sleep. So I thought I understood the container. An abusive ex. A grudge. A locked steel box near the port of Savannah. I spent 43 days proving myself right. I was wrong about the voice. Wrong about the truck outside. Wrong about the note I found under the floor seam. Most of all, I was wrong about who had prepared the air. By the end, I had carved 43 marks into the wall with the edge of a stainless steel spoon. I kept the laminated note tucked inside my sock because I believed another prisoner had left it for me. That belief gave me something to solve. The person who wrote it had never been a prisoner. That distinction kept me alive. Before Harbor Line, my older sister Erin had been the person who solved things for me. She was 4 years older and had spent 9 years in Coast Guard Marine safety, where she learned to read rust patterns, cargo seals, tide tables, and people who lied about all three. Erin could make competence feel like affection. When Cole started appearing outside my job, she didn't hug me and say it would be okay. She bought 3 door sensors, numbered the batteries with a silver Sharpie, and organized every threatening email into white binders by date. That was how she loved you, with tabs. She came to my occupational therapy appointments after I tore a tendon in my right wrist. While I practiced signing my name left-handed, she filmed my progress on her phone, saying insurance companies love to deny claims. She kept copies of both signatures. At the time, that seemed practical. After Hurricane Matthew, Erin made what she called my disaster identity vault. She used a cobalt blue Pelican, 1040 case with a clear lid, and packed it with a passport copy. A scan of my TWIC credential, old addresses, banking questions, and recordings of my voice. 27 answers in all. She had me say them tired, angry, laughing, even groggy after dental surgery. I complained halfway through. Last one, she said. It wasn't. She also set a weekly call with our mother for 8,040 every Sunday night. Same time, no excuses, Erin said. Routines made missing people easier to notice. My mother liked it because she could finish watching 60 Minutes first, although she always denied that was the reason. Erin recommended me for Harborline through a former Coast Guard contact. She knew I wanted out of the courier business. Cole and I had owned together, and she said import compliance would give me stable hours. Mostly stable anyway. Ports don't care about dinner plans. On April 2, 2022, Erin took a yellow sea kayak into Wausau Sound alone. Search crews found the kayak at 5046 the next morning. The paddle was floating nearby. Her dry bag and a damaged life vest washed up south of Little Tybee. They never found her body. 9 months later, she was declared dead. I kept her Coast Guard challenge coin beside my bed and repeated her emergency rules whenever. My chest tightened. Inventory first, conserve movement, never trust a single exit. One not lesson. It always used to make me laugh. Double constrictor, then exactly 3 half hitches. She said the third hitch separated Coast Guard work from weekend boat people. Inside the container, I remembered that lesson as comfort. Erin would have known how to get me out. She always lowered her voice when my hand shook, never soft enough to sound pitying or false. I trusted that voice more than my own judgment. Cole had trained me to second-guess every decision. Erin stepped into that empty space and made certainty look generous. I handed her every key she asked for. That was the trap. The night I disappeared, tropical rain kept slapping the security cameras hard enough to blur the yard lights. At 8:54 p.m., my TWIC card flashed red at the employee gate. The reader said my credential had already entered the secured area 18 minutes earlier. Eli Brandt, the night security officer, leaned out of his booth and tapped the screen twice. Rain's confusing it. He used his override and waved me through. Eli had worked port security for 11 years. He knew everyone's truck, lunch schedule, and cigarette brand. He also knew I stayed late when a customs correction threatened a shipment. At 9,003, an internal message appeared under my supervisor's name. Temperature rise. Bay R17. Declared value, 106,240. Immediate inspection required. I took a flashlight and went alone. The attack lasted seconds. Hood over my face, a hard spark at my ribs. My knee hit corrugated steel. Then nothing. When I came around, the container wasn't moving. The plastic restraints had been cut from my wrists, leaving purple bands. My shoes were gone. The lantern turned itself off after 6 hours, then stayed dark long enough that I started measuring time by thirst. The first ration was a vanilla Millennium bar stamped November 14, 2027. I hated vanilla before that. I still can't smell it without pressing my tongue to the back of my teeth. On day 6, I pried at the plywood partition with the spoon from the chemical toilet kit. A narrow aluminum strip lifted near the floor. Under it sat a laminated index card. It had 6 entries: 43, SG2, LEFT, 8040, blue, no E. I read them until the letters floated. Maybe 43 was another container. Maybe Southgate 2 had an exit. Maybe no E meant Eli. That possibility made my fingers go numb around the card. So I hid it inside my sock before the food hatch opened again. Near the ventilation hose, blue waxed twine held a rubber collar in place. Double constrictor knot, 3 half hitches stacked neatly beneath it. I noticed. Then I let myself dismiss it. Savannah is full of sailors, deckhands, Coast Guard retirees, and men who correct your knots without being asked. Erin's method wasn't unique. I told myself that twice. The hose kept feeding air. By then, air felt like mercy. Behind the partition were 43 vacuum-sealed bars, 5 chemical toilet packets, and one 18.9-liter water bottle connected to a clear tube. Whoever built that room calculated survival. Comfort wasn't included. Enough calories to keep my heart working. Not enough strength to fight. The note gave me a different calculation. 6 clues, 1 possible route. I didn't know it was inventory. I counted every packet twice before touching one. Again, Cole fit the story too well. We'd been together 6 years. During the first 3, he could turn a grocery run into a surprise picnic. During the last 3, He checked the mileage on my car and asked why I'd taken 9 extra minutes getting home. 11 months before the container, I obtained a temporary protective order. Harborline had also terminated his refrigeration maintenance contract after I reported him near the women's locker corridor. Then there was the money. $74,600 from the sale of our courier business, frozen by a judge until the civil case was resolved. Cole blamed me for all of it. He knew reefer units. He knew the yard's manual overrides. He still had old service keys because Harborline had never recut half its locks. His truck was a dark blue 2016 Ford F-250 with a dent above the left taillight and Georgia plate, RKM 1734. That plate lived in my head from the photographs attached to the restraining order petition. 9 days before I vanished, his email account sent me one sentence: "You keep taking things, Scout." Inside the container, the speaker used the same nickname. Sometimes the voice mentioned the frozen money. Once, a ration packet arrived with Cole's brass compass keychain taped underneath it. On another night, a flashlight crossed the food hatch, and I saw a gray sleeve like the maintenance jacket he wore through every Georgia winter, even when it was 65 degrees. The recordings had a flaw. Before each scout, there was a faint 2-note chime. Ding-ding. Then his voice. I blamed the speaker. Metal does strange things to sound, especially when you haven't slept and your mouth is splitting at the corners. Years earlier, Cole's apartment lobby intercom had made that same chime before outgoing calls, but I didn't connect it. Aaron had saved one of those voicemails in the blue Pelican case. On day 12, the speaker asked where I'd hidden the business ledger. I don't have it. Static. Cole, listen. The lantern cut out. He used darkness as punctuation? That was like him too, or close enough that my brain supplied the rest. I started planning around his temper. I left small insults in my answers. I waited for him to get careless. He never did. The person feeding me Cole's voice didn't have Cole's temper. They had files, timing, and a script. That should have bothered me. Instead, it confirmed the version of him I already feared, colder now, more controlled, finally patient enough to finish what had threatened. Every object narrowed the world toward Cole. The keychain, the jacket, the money, even the word scout. A frame works best when the victim helps assemble it. I mistook precision for improved cruelty. By day 19, Heidi loosened a rusted screw beside the ventilation housing with the spoon. 3 days later, the gap was wide enough to see a slice of the outside world. Asphalt. Weeds. The lower half of a chain-link fence. During a food delivery, headlights swept across the opening, and a dark blue F-250 rolled past. The left taillight had the dent, RKM 1734. My forehead hit the wall because my knees stopped holding me. For days I'd been bargaining with uncertainty. That license plate ended the argument. On day 27, a new water bottle came through the hatch. Cole's. Bronze sobriety medallion lay beneath it, dated 06/18/2019. Had driven him to the meeting where he received it. Had cried in the parking lot afterward, then accused me of making the day about myself because I asked him to stop squeezing my hand. The container kept turning. Old memories into evidence. 4 days later, the water stopped. I sucked condensation from the hose collar and tried not to swallow too fast. After 31 hours, the speaker clicked on. Mother's maiden name. I stared at the dark plywood. First grade teacher. No answer from me. Childhood address. The voice wasn't even pretending to be Cole now. Flat. Processed. Still, I thought he was trying to strip me down to facts he could own. When I refused, the fan stopped for 40 seconds. Mercer, I said. Mrs. Dahl, 118, Juniper Lane. More questions followed. My bank verification phrase. The wording I used when I called my mother on Sundays. Which wrist I'd injured. Whether I signed shipping forms right or left-handed. At the time, humiliation made more sense than theft. On day 36, the speaker played part of an argument from 2020 inside Cole's truck. I'd told Erin about it once. Sitting on her kitchen floor while she labeled freezer bags. Nobody else knew the full account. I decided Cole must have stolen Erin's files after she died. Day 43 began with the container lifting. Chains snapped taut overhead. The floor tilted, and the chemical toilet slid into my hip. I curled around the note in my sock and listened to the trailer tires change from yard pavement to highway. Cole was moving me. There wasn't room left for doubt, only destination. The note pressed against my ankle as the trailer turned. 6 meaningless entries becoming my only private possession. Later, police found his truck beside the abandoned spur. My blood marked the passenger seat. A 10-inch Gardner Bender cable tie from a numbered pack of 100 sat in the toolbox. Beside matching ties, his jacket was there, so were the printed emails, keychain, and medallion. By sunrise, every local station had his photograph. The move to Alibi saved my life because the person who planned it didn't account for a bad rail coupling. At 4:26 a.m., the container slammed backward. The loosened ventilation bracket tore halfway free. I shoved my right arm into the opening until metal peeled skin from my elbow, then hooked the exterior emergency cable with the broken spoon. First pull, nothing. Second, and the spoon bent. On the third, the vent panel kicked inward. I got my head through, then one shoulder. My left hand had 2 fractured fingers, so I wrapped the blue ventilation twine around my wrist and used it like a handle. I landed in wet gravel, wearing one sock. The abandoned pulpwood spur ran beside waist-high grass and a line of rusted freight cars. I followed the sound of tires until I reached United States Route 280. At 5:11, a poultry feed driver named Dennis Vale stopped his Kenworth and found me kneeling beside the white line, trying to explain a container number through lips that wouldn't close properly. I'd lost 31 pounds. The chemical toilet had burned the backs of my legs. At the hospital, a nurse cut the laminated note from my sock and placed it in a specimen bag. Police found Cole within 12 hours. He was at Blue Ridge Recovery Center in Asheville, North Carolina. He'd checked in on September 5, 2 days before I was taken. A biometric wristband logged him every 4 hours. Cameras showed group sessions, meals, room entry, medication lines. At 9:05 p.m., on September 7, he swallowed supervised medication. 7 minutes later, I entered the container. Cole had reported the F-250 stolen on August 28. The report had been filed under the truck's former South Carolina registration, which was why Savannah investigators missed it at first. He'd had no phone in treatment, no internet, no way to leave unnoticed. His DNA wasn't in the container. It wasn't on my restraints or clothes. The threatening email had been scheduled before he entered rehab. I watched the detective turn pages without looking at me. So he didn't. No. My teeth started knocking against the rim of a paper cup. I set it down before water spilled onto the blanket. Cole was innocent of this. That didn't make the container safer in my memory. It removed the only explanation I understood. Someone else had Cole's voice. Someone else knew my Sunday call time, my security answers, my injured wrist, and the private story from his truck. One person had collected all of it. At the bottom of the evidence list was a cobalt blue Pelican case, missing from Erin's storage unit since the week before I vanished. That fact wasn't in the news. The 2-note chime broke the case open. An audio examiner isolated it from every recording played inside the container. The sound matched the lobby intercom at Cole's old apartment. down to a clipped second tone caused by a failing relay in 2019. Aaron had saved that voicemail in my disaster archive. The voice wasn't live. Each sentence had been built from scraps. Investigators traced the speaker, batteries, and ration purchases to Eli Brandt. His DNA was under the food hatch. Fibers from his work gloves were embedded in the plastic restraints. GPS records from his personal truck showed 14 trips to the abandoned Elabel Spur. Had bought 43 Millennium bars and 5 chemical toilet packets with cash at separate stores. One receipt was time-stamped 6:38 a.m., 3 weeks before my abduction. Eli was arrested outside a Waffle House near Pooler. In the body camera video, he looked past the officers toward the parking lot and asked whether they had found the blue card. Not me. The card. During questioning, he admitted attacking me, sealing the doors, delivering food, and playing Cole's edited voice. Had stolen Cole's truck from a storage lot and arranged the jacket, medallion, zip ties, and blood evidence. None of it was a misunderstanding. He had watched me weaken through a pinhole camera while following a schedule printed in 12-hour blocks. One detective asked why the water stopped on day 31. Eli rubbed his thumb across a coffee stain. Needed clean answers. That was all. 4 cashier's checks paid him $12,000 each through Eidervale Risk Consulting. The final encrypted instruction directed him to sink my container in an 82-foot kaolin quarry at coordinates 32.1, 1,176 minus 81.9,884. He was supposed to complete that step before sunrise on day 43. For a few hours, the case appeared finished. Eli had access, money, equipment, and a reason to frame Cole. News crews called him the container killer, even though I was alive. Then detectives opened his encrypted files. The instructions were too personal. They specified the phrases I used with my mother, which wrist I favored, and how long I could go without blood pressure medication. They included harbor line credentials, sent before Eli ever touched my phone. Eli didn't have the Pelican case. He'd never seen the original voice files. He didn't know why 80/40 mattered, and his copy of the plan ordered him not to open the laminated card. The payment company had been formed 14 days before Aaron disappeared. Its initials were E.V., Eidervale. Aaron used to photograph eiders every winter and call them ugly little tanks. I remembered that while staring at the incorporation page. I can't explain why, but that's the detail my brain chose. Eli had built the cage. Someone else had designed the life that went inside it. His contract labeled me ASSET until the disposal page, where the name changed to waste. Beside that word, someone had typed a deadline. 05,000 OD. EAS turn. No extension. No recovery. Eli had initialed all 31 pages himself. Eidervale's mail drop led to a storage locker outside Brunswick. Inside were 3 wigs, dental veneers, 2 harbor line jackets, a thermal badge printer, and photographs of me entering work from 6 different angles. A tote held 12 blank custom seals. The marine adhesive beside them had been purchased on the company card. The locker had been rented by a woman using the name Erica Voss. Toll cameras found her 11 days after my abduction, driving north near Jacksonville. In one frame, she turned toward the windshield glare. My sister had been dead for 523 days. The woman in that photograph was Erin. Investigators pulled footage from Harborline's Southgate 2. A woman wearing my jacket and hairstyle had used my cloned TWIC card while I was inside the container. Her left shoulder sat slightly higher than the right, the result of a clavicle fracture Erin got during a Coast Guard boarding in 2014. The software processed her face. An 83.1% match to me. After analysts removed the wig line, contour makeup, and dental pieces, the match to Aaron was 96.4%. My mother watched 3 seconds of the footage and covered her mouth. That's her walk. Nobody argued. Then the lab report came back on the ventilation hose. The blue, waxed twine had been tied in a double constrictor knot, followed by exactly 3 half hitches. Under the final wrap, sealed against the rubber collar, was Aaron's partial fingerprint. The third hitch. She hadn't only planned the container. She had stood inside it, pulled the knot tight, tested the airflow, and left enough oxygen to keep me useful. The marine adhesive matched the tube from her locker. I kept seeing her hands from years earlier, guiding mine over a practice rope at the kitchen table. 3, Shed said. Never 2. That lesson wasn't saving me anymore. Using my credentials, Aaron had authorized the diversion of 12 refrigerated containers carrying oncology. Medication valued at $8.4 million. The shipments were rerouted to Shell consignees in Georgia, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. My login approved every change. My voice passed 2 verification calls. Security cameras showed my face. While I counted food packets, Aaron was wearing me. Her plan required me alive long enough to answer fresh security prompts. That was why Eli stopped the fan. Why he withheld water. Why the questions arrived in batches. Once the 12th shipment cleared on day 42, the plan changed my status from ASSETT to waste. Day 43 was the murder date. The quarry instruction carried Aaron's digital signing certificate. So did the order to burn my vehicle after my body was placed inside. She intended the remains to support a story in which I stole millions, framed my ex, and fled until guilt or greed ended badly. There was no rescue step in any file, no delay request, no alternate ending. Aaron had paid Eli to watch me die slowly enough for her schedule, then quickly enough to erase the difference between us. The sister I mourned wasn't hiding, not from danger. She had removed herself from the records so she could come back wearing my name. A spreadsheet estimated my weekly calorie loss and warned Eli never to let my weight fall below 112 pounds before the last verification call with my mother. The laminated card stayed in evidence, almost 6 full months, because everyone treated it as something meant for me. A document examiner finally angled it beneath sidelight and found pressure marks from writing on a sheet above it. The card had been torn from a larger page. Agents later recovered the matching lower half from Aaron's locker. Across the top she had typed, Tessa Mercer, Field version 6. The note in my sock wasn't a warning. It wasn't an escape route. Aaron had dropped her impersonation checklist while preparing the container, and the floor seam had swallowed it before she noticed. 43 was the number of days before Harborline required a live photo badge renewal. Her cloned credential would fail after that deadline. SG2 meant Southgate 2, the only entrance still using an older scanner without facial department verification. LE-EFT reminded her that I signed manifests left-handed after my tendon injury. The practice videos Aaron recorded at occupational therapy weren't for insurance. They were training footage. 8040 was my Sunday call with our mother. Aaron had chosen that routine, then rehearsed it so she could maintain my voice in the family calendar after I disappeared. BLU meant the Cobalt Pelican case. Passport scan. TWISE copy. 27 security answers. My voice while tired, angry, medicated, and laughing. No. E meant never answer to Aaron. That one stayed on the page after the others blurred. She hadn't planned to borrow my identity for one shipment. She intended to live as me permanently. Investigators rebuilt the timeline. Aaron recommended me for Harborline 26 months before she staged the kayaking accident. She steered me into a position with customs authority, valuable cargo access, and weak biometric gates. She helped me document Cole's abuse because his threats gave her a suspect ready for use. She kept his voicemails, photographed his truck, and stored objects that could later be planted. Even the customs discrepancy that kept me late had been inserted through a Shell vendor account. Aaron controlled. The 106,240 shrimp shipment was bait. My supervisor's message had been scheduled hours earlier. Her final sequence filled 4 pages. Complete the 12th diversion by day 42. Move the container at 35 a.m. on day 43. Kill me at the quarry. Place my body inside my own burned vehicle with forged bank records and cargo receipts. Continue under my name at another American port. Beside the disposal step, Aaron had calculated dental heat damage, likely recovery time, and which bones might preserve surgical evidence from my wrist. Shed attached a reminder to remove the metal suture anchor first. There was no panic in those pages, no improvised cruelty. The dates began years earlier. Storage records showed Aaron practicing my left-handed signature on July 14, 2020. She had ordered dental molds matching my teeth 6 weeks later. The disaster vault came after that. I remembered sitting at her table, annoyed because she kept making me repeat my childhood address into her phone. She slid a glass of water toward me and said, "Accuracy matters when you're tired." The sentence had sounded caring. It was quality control. Aaron didn't discover that she could become me. She built me into someone she could replace, collected the pieces while I thanked her, and scheduled my death before she scheduled her own. Eli pleaded guilty in federal court. Aaron was indicted for kidnapping, attempted murder, identity theft, cargo theft, and conspiracy. Her photograph went to every major port authority in the country. She was never found. 17 months after my escape, on March 3, 2025, an automated alert reached the Port Newark security desk at 2013 a.m. Someone had presented my revoked TWISC credential at gate 12. The gate camera captured a woman with my current haircut, not the style I'd worn before the container. The one I had cut 6 weeks after leaving the hospital. She signed with her left hand. On her wrist was Aaron's old Coast Guard watch, the stainless steel one with a scratch across the number 7. Facial department software returned a 98.7% match to me. At 2024, my mother's phone received a 9-second voicemail. The caller ID showed my number. The voice sounded like me after 3 nights without sleep. Mom, running late, Sunday. 8:40. The message ended with the faint scrape I make when my right thumbnail catches the side of my phone case. Investigators asked whether Aaron could have recorded that sound before her disappearance. I couldn't answer. Then security pulled the gate log. Gate records showed the woman entering the restricted container yard at 02:13:44 Eastern Standard Time. Cameras followed her past a row of refrigerated units bound for Belgium, then lost her behind stacked chassis. No badge registered at the exit, no vehicle left under her name. There was no corresponding exit scan.